My name is Erica Lorraine Spencer, and I remain subject to state surveillance and terrorism by the state of California that is operating a malicious targeting system, which is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices. And it is in violation of federal stalking statute 18 U.S.C. sections 2261A subsections 1 and 2. My website and podcast serve the public good by publishing evidence of the public entity's ceaseless engagement in a pattern of conduct intended to stalk and monitor via communication devices, surveil, harass, and terrorize an American citizen in concert with the people of the state of California. Documentation serves the lawful purposes of wide exposure, federal prosecution, and influencing federal legislation with policies specifically designed to punish, dismantle, and disincentivize an unprecedented targeting system by a public entity that acts in concert with the people of the state in order to criminally place under surveillance and terrorize an American citizen, which is a matter of public corruption in the state of California. Erica Lorraine Spencer here. The following is an audio version of video evidence that is captured for purposes of mass distribution, which is why I am capturing it and sharing it on the podcast for evidentiary purposes and also to reveal the wealth of documentation that extends beyond what it is that I document on podcasts. Much of the video and images will be published onto the YouTube channel, the P.O.C, and it is also shared on the Google Drive. Again, this is for purposes of revealing what I remain subject to, which is federal group stalking and monitoring. It is a demonic system of state surveillance that the government is practicing in concert with the people of the state, and it should be known and well understood that for the government to engage in federal group stalking and monitoring, this is a crime that is committed with a criminal purpose to threaten the life of an American citizen. This is to conspire to murder and or permanently kidnap an American citizen while engaging in a perpetual sex offense in concert with the people of the state. That's Ontario Police. It's Ontario Police and the Ontario International Airport. And that is putting everybody at AVANATH Capital Management and Federal Prison. And I want to be clear, it's currently 3:26 p.m. And they're also engaged in exhibiting severe mental illness while the entity that is demon possessed, that is showing an obsession with gang stalking me. That's what the demons are doing, while having an inability to control themselves based on their interests, which are also divergent at federal prosecution with regard to the people and the state itself. Like, for example, Paul Leon versus AVANATH Capital Management, who are gang stalking together, the police department and the people of the state at Woodside Senior Apartments, who are being prosecuted while the police department, illustrated by helicopter activity, which is the criminal interference with quiet enjoyment, by the way. And then while you hear commercial plane activity, while I want to be clear, that was demonic. Remember, amplification, you're witnessing the demonic period. That was a blend of helicopter activity within plane activity, and they are both criminal conduct by the city of Ontario, whose mayor is being removed from position. That's Paul Leon. And the Ontario International Airport, which is being shut down, that's engaged in what is domestic terrorism, not engaged in the business of flights and paying for tickets to, again, who are buying these tickets in Ontario. Those are gang stalkers. So the entity is engaging in what is flying over. This is, again, the mentally ill who are witnessing my documentation as I publish it, even hostile to what they are listening to me comment on inside of the apartment. And I'll be frank, I was certainly right now just thinking out loud regarding how foolish the entity is, regarding how the feds and the rest of the world shall forever associate the to be disbanded Ontario International Airport with federal group stalking and monitoring, that is domestic terrorism. And as I am inside of the apartment, which is a private space where the city of Ontario and the people of the state who represent the city of Ontario are engaged in criminal interference together in order to monitor criminal interference with quiet enjoyment, which is the criminal contribution to public corruption by a public entity, that's gang stalking through the airport. Doing so at, I just want to be clear, the entity has, looks like American Airlines has a flight from Terminal 4 at what is 3:29 p.m. Well, if it's taken off at 3:29 p.m., it would still be rising in elevation from Terminal 4, which is under no circumstances going to be at the same time. We're 3 minutes in, so the plane that was flying over right now, as the audible activity went from helicopter activity to plane activity, that was a plane that would be taking off right now. It's 3:28 p.m. So American Airlines is getting ready to take off. There is a Delta Airlines flight, however, that did take off at 3:25 p.m. They're headed to Seattle, however, and they're taking off at what is from Terminal 2, and it looks like it's a little late, so it's stating it's not taking off until 3:40 p.m. We're looking at right now what is the arrivals and the departures from the Ontario International Airport, which I have used many times in order to demonstrate how this does not even clearly demonstrate what the airport is actually engaging in, because where there are no overnight flights from what just have the two terminals, Terminal 2 and Terminal 4, which are located, by the way, at 2900 East Airport Drive and 2500 East Airport Drive, where there is no vantage point from these two terminals where they will be hovering over the apartment complex and be capable of being heard inside of this apartment like you just heard right now, however. And there's also no time that matches up with the plane activity based on what the Ontario International Airport has published regarding what it's doing as a matter of business at the airport. In addition to that, there is no vantage point where Terminal 2 and Terminal 4 is going to result in hovering over the Woodside Senior Apartments. But again, this is the same property where the fake sun that I just documented is hovering over this apartment complex. Remember, where the same city of Ontario was gang stalking through the tremendous amplification of merely emptying the dumpsters, another criminal interference with quiet enjoyment. And the fake sun was over this same apartment complex where Amazon and the city of Ontario gang stalking over the venue that's called Crossing a Path and activity creation, and they're doing so with the Ontario Police Department, who, like the cowards that they are, but they're also maniacal psychopaths who are indeed obsessed with my genitalia. And because they know that I'm documenting that helicopter activity, which is a demonstration of the demonic creation of activity, it is as supernatural as the idol fake sun, it immediately alters into some method of plane activity. While the demons know I'm holding up my phone, but they would like to secretly threaten my life. They would like to secretly monitor my genitalia when my panties are down, when my legs are spread open. All right, when they know that I'm in that private space, and they like to hover and fly around over me in helicopter, and they like to do the same thing with airplanes. Under no circumstances is it going to be heard inside of the apartment. And under all circumstances, it's creating the specific environment, and it is the criminal interference with quiet enjoyment. And so since we're here, I'm going to go ahead and just use this as an opportunity to point to those who are criminally and civilly liable. That is the conduct of a sex offender. Her license plate is 5WUB as in boy, 715. It's impossible audible activity. And it is as targeted as the fake sun being over the apartments for over 9 hours in the day. And it is while this sex offender knows that my panties were just down, my legs spread open, genitalia exposed. And it's also the pattern of a predator that is communicating a threat. Walking outside right now to monitor. Let's get the coward. It's crossing path and engineer light monitoring. With the Ontario police that were monitoring my genitalia as well. Okay. Doing so, males and females monitoring my genitalia. Tracy Banks is monitoring with strangers that are monitoring my genitalia. The Ontario police are stalking in a helicopter. The Ontario International Airport is stalking in planes. Demons are pacing, crossing path, while his shadow's moving across the wall. Okay, that's impossible light activity. And so is this. While you're hearing the ceiling cracking and somebody walking downstairs, that's not the explanation for impossible audible activity. That's called crossing a path. So let's get the license plate of this sex offender. Again, that's the third party with license plate 5WUB715. They derive pleasure from sexually violating in order to obstruct justice. The third party accessing the vehicle. I've already documented all these license plates. They're all being prosecuted together. Okay, but accessing the vehicle and using the alarms as a means of audible activity 077XV handicap. Walking into the apartment. I want you to see my shadow here. There's my shadow over there. Here's my shadow right here. Here's my shadow right here in the center. That's not caused by ordinary light. Okay, what just went on in the bathroom was a matter of public information. You got a bunch of demons pacing around in the parking lot, pacing around on Vine and G Street, monitoring inside of 7-Eleven, where my genitalia is a matter of public information, and the entity that is hostile to being prosecuted under existing HUD law. As I do my research under existing federal laws with regard to prosecuting the sex offenders who are gang stalking at Woodside, which AVANATH Capital Management is going to be prosecuted for, and this is the evidence of it. I want you see my shadow all the way over there? This is the prosecution under HUD law as well. They're engaged in Title 18 federal stalking. All right, so under VAWA, the VAWA federal legislation passed in 2021 and 2022, under existing federal law, AVANATH Capital Management, Linda Reyes, gang stalking in Plainview under the fake sun. The demon gang stalking in this video in Unit 55. With men and women that I don't know, with the government that's on video stalking right now and on an ongoing basis in the specific environment is going to be prosecuted for engaging in sexual violence and violation of HUD regulation. This is a HUD regulated property, and that plain activity is going to prosecute them. This is existing sexual violence. That plain activity is speaking to the state monitoring my genitalia, being obsessed with my private parts. All right, and this is why the entity flew over gang stalking 3 times in helicopter today, doing so to psychologically torture, trying to stop me from reporting them to the feds, publishing my evidence on the internet, and engaging in the sex offense of monitoring in a bathroom and making sure that you know it by the amplified sound of a ceiling cracking because you're walking up and down the stairs. Walking up and down the stairs. Doing so in the apartment does not create any cracking. Neither does the sun rise and set over one building. Neither do your shadows appear in all manner on the ground and upright, multiple shadows. This is speaking to surveillance of genitalias. While the demons like in number 41 who work for AVANATH, who are going to prison, have custody of minor children. And they practice sexual violence as a way of life. And then they threaten your life with the government that stalks in planes and helicopters. That's why those children are going to be taken from their custody. You've also seen them gang stalking with their parents. They're also losing custody for that. There's no planes taking off here. This is speaking to, again, the prosecution under existing HUD laws. Just like speaker companies, Alvarado Gardens, violating federal law, existing federal law, while they're gang stalking. Simultaneity of activity by the people hovering over the apartment complex. They were already here. They were already here. Okay, that sex offender walked out of her apartment and was sitting engaged in surveillance. The simultaneity of conduct is speaking to that. And that's a sex offender that's monitoring together. That's the Ontario International Airport. Alan D. WAPNER is a sex offender obsessed with my genitalia. The Ontario International Airport is used as a means of domestic terrorism, not lawful business and relations regarding the business of the city, conducting payments and accepting funds in order to engage in flights to destinations. That was relevant positioning, light activity, and simultaneity of conduct, as I'm referencing sexual violence that children are subject to inside of the facilitating venue of unit number 41. All right, they're gang stalking with the Ontario International Airport. They have children engaging in that, and they're monitoring my genitalia while they're in custody of children. And the simultaneity of my referencing that, the demons that are hostile to it, they engage in things such as bathroom monitoring to threaten you, and they also engage in things such as stalking in planes and helicopters to threaten you and psychologically torture you. But logic dictates, and so do the logistics of the operation of that airport that has Terminal 2 and Terminal 4. The entity, as you pay attention to the audible activity, came out of nowhere. So you were talking about being right over the roof of this property property where all of a sudden you're hearing the plane activity, but it did not originate from a certain destination. It suddenly sounds here as though they're taking off here. That's called stalking with amplified audible activity, which is also the criminal interference with quiet enjoyment, where AVANATH Capital Management is indeed engaged in gang stalking with the state in violation of Title 18 with all of the residents, with their employees, with the public who come onto the grounds just like that sex offender did. Gang stalking, which is not an explanation for the cracking walls and ceiling. That's an inherent violation of quiet enjoyment. That's not how the apartments are created here at a senior citizen complex, by the way, where they're hovering over in planes and helicopters. That's the city of Ontario providing incriminating evidence against it, the federal government. The state is engaged in what is HUD violations with all of the properties in the state of California while they are participating in that federal housing program. And it is inherently in violation of VAWA, V-A-W-A, violence against women, while federal group stalking and monitoring is underway. And that's exactly what Tracy Banks is engaged in as an adult who lives in the apartment, and also based on what is in existing federal law. That's Title 18. So I'm giving you a bare bones legal analysis about what the entity is doing. And as I do so, you're literally looking at them engaging in federal group stalking and monitoring. That Latino male is crossing path. This is somebody that's engaged in surveillance. He wasn't even necessarily inside of any of their apartments. That's the stalking conduct. They sit in their cars. That's why you had somebody sounding the alarm. They were monitoring my genitalia. They are always engaged in that conduct in order to obsessively stalk together. These are psychopaths. Psychopaths have to be removed from access to children. And that's the Latino family in unit number 41. They're all going to prison. And if they're not natural born, they're going to be deported. But they will be removed from the children that are literally their lives are threatened. And they are surrounded by predators who are monitoring my genitalia. So those children are also subject to that sexually violent threat. They're psychopaths and terrorists. They're gang stalking with the city of Ontario, who threatens and psychologically tortures me as I report them to the feds. And that's also why they're going to federal prison. This demon is engaged in monitoring my genitalia. Again, her license is 5WUB715. Were you hearing the amplified plane activity? All right, where you are hearing the amplified sound of the ceiling cracking, which the entity is doing to engage in sexually motivated psychological torture. Oh, I want you to know that I know that you were nude. I knew that you took your panties down right now. I know that you'd like to report that to the feds, so I'm going to do it right now because I was monitoring when you were researching VAWA federal legislation. That's what that audible activity is reasonably communicating. And Tracy Banks is a sex offender monitoring with males and females and the government, her own daughter. And she is a documented sex offender placing cameras inside of my apartment in Los Angeles, California. She is fully engaged in and fully participates and supports the entity, the state, being engaged in what's going on concerning my genitalia, okay? Essentially engaging in what is trafficking on the internet so that the entity can watch me in the nude, unbeknownst to me. And sex offenders like the demons in Unit 41 have access to children while they engage in that conduct together. And they are using the airports, they're using the police departments to engage in that level of surveillance. That's why you have, again, the inexplicable and clear criminal conduct of stalking by commercial planes. And demon-possessed gang stalking pilots are the ones that are crashing planes, murdering people. They're not accidents. And they're a threat to national security while the Ontario International Airport remains in operation. It's going to be shut down. And the entity is going to provide every gang stalking airline, including Delta Airlines, Southwest Airlines, American Airlines, Frontier. You have what is Avianca. You have UPS, FedEx, Amazon, who are demon-possessed gang stalkers in their vehicles, like I documented Amazon today. All right, they're engaging in this pattern of conduct by using commercial planes, and it's absolutely psychotic. But it's also in violation of VAWA, V-A-W-A. Violence against women, and that's what the entity is also in violation of HUD, because Woodside Senior Apartments is a HUD property, and everybody here can't even pay their rent while they're gang stalking with the state. That's also violating HUD. Remember, we're going to prosecute the entity. AVANATH is a third party, and the city of Ontario is the state, and they're acting together violating HUD. The state will be prosecuted for that and criminally and incentivizing and contributing to public corruption while doing so. I'm going to publish this on the podcast as well, because this is the I documented essentially over 13 hours of psychological torture while I publish evidence on the internet. This is what the entity is doing on an ongoing basis, doing so by helicopter, doing so by plane, doing so with simultaneity to what it is that I document, doing so in a sexually violent manner because they're hostile, trying to deter publishing evidence, which is, again, trying to murder the one that is whistleblowing. That's a federal offense in the same way that psychological torture in order to deter publishing and documentation, where the entity is seeking to murder and kidnap you, because that's why you're gang stalking as a police under a fake sun and a fake moon at night. They're doing so in furtherance of the conspiracy to murder and kidnap, which is already established within this particular fact pattern pertaining to the state of California's conspiracy to murder me. All right. It is, again, 10:03 p.m. That amplified audible activity coincided with audible activity and crossing path and engineered light. That's a sex offender that was already in position to cross path while I was recording on my phone. And then this is what you have as I'm documenting the elements outside. That's really revealing what are the sex offenders that are the city of Ontario, the population itself, that are monitoring my genitalia inside of a facilitating video. It's not a private space. All right. It is, again, 10:03 p.m. This is the removal of Paul Leon. He's not going to remain as a mayor, and neither is Linda Reyes going to remain outside of federal prison. Neither is Woodside Senior Apartments going to be any more operating under the HUD program, and they're going to be prosecuted on more than one basis under I.I.S. federal legislation and also under existing federal law with regard to federal stalking that AVANATH Capital Management is intentionally, knowingly, and maliciously in violation of while they are gang stalking with the residents, with their employees, with the public that come onto the grounds. They're the people of the state, and the state that you just saw gang stalking with AVANATH. This evidence is going against the state. It is currently, again, 10:04 p.m. This is P.O.C. And while I'm here, let me just go ahead and reference again. This is with regard to the VAWA legislation. VAWA is what I'm stating if you can't hear. Violence Against Women, the Reauthorization Act of 2021. All right. And so Woodside Senior Apartments, AVANATH Capital Management is in violation of it under more than one subsection based on federal stalking that you just saw the evidence of and that the pattern of conduct fully establishes. And it is an independent basis of prosecuting the people and prosecuting the state of California and the entire property of Woodside Senior Apartments, all of the employees. They're going to federal prison that work here. The entity in units 33 through 64 are going to federal prison. Tracy Banks is going to a mental asylum for the rest of her life. She's never getting out for trying to murder me for my entire life. And now I'm prosecuting her for it. And I'm also showing how she is acting in concert and relying on the government and relying on the people of the state, like the demons at Woodside Senior Apartments, who are acting in conformity to that. And they do so with a vicious level of malice and with an ongoing show and demonstration of desperation. They're going to prison. They're the AVANATH executives. They're going to compensate with damages. And it is also relevant, as I am now going to also speak to under existing federal law, which is VAWA. They're also in violation of federal stalking itself. But this is a HUD property. They are violating HUD. By the way, when you're engaged in criminal surveillance, domestic terrorism, they're violating the privacy rights, the information regarding the residents, the identification information, social security numbers, all that's public information where the state's gang stalking. I already showed that as I was a property manager at Alvarado Gardens and Speaker Companies. They are an existing violation while they are engaged in federal stalking, criminal monitoring. It's public information, that which is supposed to be private. It is also that which is ongoing while they are engaged in federal stalking, criminal surveillance with the government, all of these angles, including Linda Reyes gang stalking with the state and the people, while they are in violation of Title 18, Section 2261A, subsections 1 and 2. This is another area in recognizing their violation under VAWA, Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act, and it would be based on the adult cohabitant. Tracy Banks is gang stalking me. She's criminally monitoring me with the state. And AVANATH Capital Management, I'm arguing that they're doing it with their employees. AVANATH itself is violating VAWA. AVANATH itself, through its employees, through its contractors, through the public, through the government that's gang stalking on the grounds and in the airspace, just like I just captured on video, is violating VAWA while engaging what is an act of domestic violence, gang stalking, which is a threat to your life, okay? This is just prosecuting under existing law. What the Ontario International Airport just did, it's been doing all day long, which I also documented, and so let me just include this in the video here. AVANATH Capital Management, as I began specifically noting when I began a particular project, publishing the evidence regarding the people of the state on the venue of the internet, which is, again, where criminal surveillance is underway. It's not a matter of privacy. Everything happening on the internet is public. You're subject to monitoring by the state. In other words, that's what I mean by public. You have an illusion that there's privacy and there's not. The government is monitoring. The government is monitoring everything that I'm doing, and the government proved that with regard to everything that it was hostile to as I publish it, as I speak to a license plate, as I document and put it on the internet. The entity, through these methods that you just saw right now, again, the people of the state, pacing, pounding, earthquake conduct inside of the apartment. You have, what is the duration of the day? Technically, you're talking about during the 9 a.m. hour until what is present. It's 10 p.m. But I stopped working on that particular project. I use that just as a gauge regarding ceaseless psychological torture, which is not capable of being quantified. But with regard to prosecuting criminally and civilly, the entity is going to compensate for the harms that are inflicted by psychological torture, which is on a 24-hour basis that you cannot quantify. And this is speaking to, again, criminal interference with quiet enjoyment by the entity that's gang stalking with the police, gang stalking with the city airport, which is a inherent threat to your life, gang stalking with the entity that's living at the unit, and while doing so, inherently violating, criminally interfering with quiet enjoyment. And that is for the criminal purpose of what is communicating a threat, because they're monitoring what I'm looking at on the internet. As I review this law, I'm threatened with the notion of monitoring my genitalia. And as I'm walking outside and documenting it, very much the entire entity is aware that my pants and my panties and my genitalia were exposed and everything that happened in the bathroom. That is psychological harm of a sexual nature as well. And the government's going to be prosecuted for it. All right. Doing so with impunity. Alan D. WAPNER, Paul Leon, they don't care that the airport's being shut down. They don't care that they're being removed from office. They don't care about any so-called constitutional rights. They don't care about the elderly going to prison. Neither do the elderly care about going to prison. Tracy Banks doesn't care about getting locked up either. They don't care. Okay, this is the national security threat. Those demons gang stalking in commercial planes in a manner that is irreconcilable and incongruent with taking off from Terminal 2 and Terminal 4, but yet the audible activity is such that it abruptly sounds over the roof as though they're taking off right here at Woodside. That's the P.O.C. And this is also where the fake sun remains and the fake moon, as you just saw at night. This is where engineer light remains in this apartment all day long. The Ontario International Airport is a threat to national security, and it will be shut down because of its engagement in kidnapping with the city of Ontario, gang stalking with the city, while I've been subject to kidnapping kidnapping by the people, and also because they are engaged in what is domestic terrorism. It's literally a means of funding and systematically engaging in terrorism in the city of Ontario. It is currently 10:10 p.m. All right, this is P.O.C. All right, gang stalking with the Ontario International Airport, molesting with lights, a sex offense, and they're gang stalking with the sex offenders, 22547T1. They're gang stalking while the Ontario International Airport, that's the AVANATH employee, he's going to prison. All right, and the children that he's gang stalking with right now, they do so as a retaliatory measure because they know exactly what I just documented. He's gang stalking with his 2 adult sons who drive the BMW that I documented. He drives the SUV that's typically parked here. I've already documented their license plates. I also documented them engaged in criminal summoning with the Ontario Police. I document them gang stalking with the Ontario Police via helicopter with their kids under the fake sun and engineered light, monitoring inside of a private space via their kids. And that's a sex offense right now. They do so as the Ontario International Airport immediately. As I was typing right now on the phone, the entity is amplifying the car doors. That's demons communicating hostility. It's audible activity to monitor inside of the apartment where I'm hearing the loud door closure inside. Those are demons. And those children are in a threatening household while their gang stalking parents are engaging with retaliatory actions while I document them. They're losing custody of those kids. All right, and they do so with impunity. They gang stalk with them. You're engaging in domestic terrorism with children, then you'll lose your children, and they communicate the fact that they don't want their children. The federal government is going to take them. Those are the demons in Units 41. All right, that license plate represents AVANATH gang stalking, by the way, in violation of the HUD regulations that govern this property. And they're also doing so in violation of Title 18. Ontario International Airport hovered again over the property while they are stalking in the path with light activity out here. They slam the car door. They're pacing while they walk into the unit. They're gang stalking the entire time. Those are the demons that engage in retaliatory conduct as you document them. Those are psychopaths who are a threat to children. Okay, those are the sex offenders documented living under a fake sun. They're all going to prison also, because those are the psychopaths that color the conduct that they're engaging in. This is terrorism. It's in furtherance of murder. It's a perpetual sex offense. They are monitoring my genitalia while they're in custody of children, and they engage in ongoing psychological torture tactics because they're hostile to the fact that they want to monitor a woman's genitalia and you not tell the feds about it. And they have kids. You're losing those kids, and they're going to prison. And if any of them are not natural born citizens, them and everybody else in the city of Ontario are being deported. All right. Again, the employee of AVANATH. Again, AVANATH is being prosecuted for gang stalking, and it is in violation of existing HUD laws that govern this property. And they do so with impunity in concert with the city of Ontario that is hovering again in defiance of federal law. They're gang stalking, psychologically torturing the federal prosecutor. The airport's being shut down, and all gang stalking pilots are going to prison. And if they really want to get illustrated and animated like the demon Tracy Banks and like the demons in unit number 55, they're going to a mental asylum. But the gang stalking airlines, they're going to be prosecuted for domestic terrorism. And it should be known publicly that the airlines are engaged in terrorism as a way of being, and they're not having genuine collisions and accidents. They're murdering people. It's the acts of terrorism, domestic terrorism in this country. It's a national security threat that the Ontario International Airport continues to operate. And that was an ongoing sex offense, also stalking the path with light while those demons are monitoring me. The ongoing noise, how do I know that they're out there? This is the entity that is stalking with the ongoing amplification of a car door closure. And that's why all the way out there, since you want to let me know that you're hostile, I'll go out and document you're hostile, that you are hostile while you're in custody of those children that you're a threat to. Because that's exactly what that is representing, while they're all monitoring, which is a sex offense, together as a way of life, as a community with the government. It's also notably in violation of existing HUD policies. They're all relying on assistance to pay their rent. They're all losing that as well. And AVANATH Capital Management shall not participate in HUD housing while it's violating existing privacy laws. And they're also engaged in the violation of laws governing domestic violence, federal stalking under Title 18. And they do so with impunity. They psychologically torture while criminally defaming at the same time. That's in furtherance of the entity's conspiracy to murder and kidnap. This is all malicious conduct that AVANATH Capital Management engages in with its residents, with its employees, like this documentation also establishes, and the body of evidence. But this all right here is also, again, prosecuting AVANATH Capital Management. And this is the prosecution of the state. All of these demons collectively represent households who will all be removed from children. They're all losing federal housing benefits. They will all be prosecuted and have domestic terrorism and sexual violence on their criminal records, and they will not be qualified to ever accept federal housing benefits again. It's not leaving their criminal record. All right. And this is also the prosecution of the company AVANATH that has other properties in California that are also gang stalking. This is a statewide P.O.C. And the state of California also, upon blowing this whistle and understanding what the state is doing, the state of California is violating privacy policies regarding all housing in the United States where HUD law applies. They are doing so while criminal monitoring is underway in the state. They're doing so with the people, with these companies that are inherently violating those privacy laws. And they're also doing so while violating laws governing domestic violence, such as stalking. Federal stalking under Title 18 is sufficient for violating the HUD regulation regarding VAWA, violence against women. It is currently 10:32 p.m. That's a retaliatory act. They're monitoring ceaselessly. As soon as I stopped the previous video and I converted it to audio, the demon above begins pacing again. The demon in her bedroom, immediately she wakes up and is pacing in the kitchen. All right. And as I'm documenting, then you're coming home with your kids in tow and amplifying the door closure. You're monitoring with multiple shadows while the entity is flying over in planes. Okay, they're all going to prison, and the federal government is not ignorant about everything that they're doing. I'm an ongoing narrative aspect regarding everything that the demons are maliciously engaging in, speaking to how you treat, recognize, and prosecute domestic terrorism, which is malicious. It's satanic. These are murderers. They're pedophiles. They practice witchcraft, which is, again, not a religious rite where it is inspiring, where it is the system whereby they're engaging in what is an ongoing criminal system of targeting someone. It's not a religious right there. Where the government is practicing it, it's not a religious right. It's a system of organized crime. To murder people, to psychologically torture, where the government's engaged in it. And that's what this practice of witchcraft, which is inherently sexually violent, that's posing a threat to those children in Unit 41, where they're surrounded by sex offenders, pedophiles. All right. Those are kidnappers and murderers. And that's what they support. And they're hostile to being exposed while gang stalking. That's nobody that needs to be in the possession and the custody of minor children. And they're gang stalking 24/7 with the demon inside of this apartment with me, 51, and with the demon in Unit 55, with the city of Ontario and all of its instrumentalities, the police, the entity that's gang stalking through the airports, and all of the airlines as well, who will be exposed for engaging in domestic terrorism. These are not plane collisions and accidents. It's a national security threat. This is exposing domestic terrorism. All right. And the demons that are gang stalking in planes, going to that extent to stalk me in a plane, those are the ones that are flying into buildings and bodies of water. They are suicidal. They are mentally ill. They are obsessive psychopaths, very deranged. All right. It is current. And this is all while the federal government is aware of what they're doing and currently investigating. It's 10:34 p.m. This is also documentation of criminal obstruction. This is P.O.C.